what is meant for us, I think, finds us. And I think we kind of just have to be ready. We just have to be open and so completely done with what isn't working, so we can actually look forward and look to see, well, what is possible.
Every single one of us comes to that moment when we experience a different self, a different part of us within us. And it's about, what do we do? How do we seek to focus on it? And whatever we focus on, we know is what expands. So it's about how we come to expand that part of consciousness, because the physical ego self is also part of consciousness. And I would love to hear your views on consciousness, Meera. What do you define consciousness as?
Well, consciousness for me is all there is. And so we are conscious. We're pure conscious awareness. That's who we really are. And that's what we might call the higher self. But it's very natural. It's very natural. We're always aware of something, aren't we? And really what's happened is the ego is just a collection of thoughts. So it downloaded into our unconscious mind, and it provides this kind of framework of, I am this, I am that. And we kind of identify with these thoughts. And so it becomes like a thought created reality. That's one of the chapters in my book, actually, the Surrender book. And it's like we wear a virtual reality headset. And so everything we see, everything we hear, everything we experience is kind of through these filters of the mind. So we never have a pure experience. So for me, everybody's birthright is to have this pure experience of awareness, of presence. And we know, we talk about being present. And there's a difference even between being present and presence.
Welcome to the Daily Soul Bytes show. I am your host, Bola Abimbola. And this is the show where we interview guest authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs from the fields of spirituality, psychology, and leadership to share their insights for the expansion of collective consciousness. And today I have a very special guest right here in the UK with me. Her name is Meera Ishaya. Welcome to the show, Meera.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Meera. I'll read a bit about your bio before we start. Meera is an Ishaya monk, meditation teacher, and author. Is a spiritual teacher and provides tuition with ongoing guidance for those who learn Ascension meditation. Meera specialises in helping people in pain, physical, mental, and emotional pain. She's written 3 books to support people who want to explore consciousness and transcend suffering. And this is so powerful, because sometimes we Meera and I were speaking before we came online about how, pain is one thing that is a game changer. A lot of the times we all have something that limits us in order for us to really pay attention to that path of authenticity on the spiritual awakening journey. So I'm really pleased that Meera is here today to share her insights and her experience to encourage and inspire us. So thank you, Meera. So tell us, how did you come to this place? I know we've mentioned that pain is a game changer. So this is something that I know you went through, and it would be good to hear how it caught your attention and what led you to now become an author as well as a spiritual teacher, helping those who are also ascending in their consciousness.
Yeah, well, for me, I think I've always been the sort of person who's struggled through life. I think really the biggest part of that struggle is because I didn't know who I was. So I was always trying to be something else. And really it kind of led from one, physical experience to another, from pain of headaches initially. And it seems like my body just started to shut down more and more. And then, I sort of did all the tick boxes in life. I got married, got a job, had children. And with the birth of my second child, I had a condition that's fairly rare called symphysis pubis dysfunction. And I still have it now. However, my experience of it is very, very different. But this condition left me in long-term chronic pain. And I got to the point where I just couldn't cope anymore. Like the pain was like excruciating, off the chart. And so I got to the point where I actually didn't want to live anymore. And so, in a state of desperation, I attempted to end my life. And thankfully, I was caught in the act, because I couldn't walk very well. So I kind of made a bit of noise shuffling towards the kitchen on crutches because I couldn't walk physically. So I was dragging myself and grabbed a knife out of the drawer, and I was gonna cut my wrist. My husband caught me in the act, and obviously tried to talk me down. And it's bizarre actually, because it's like, when you get to that place, like the lowest rock bottom place, it's like you just stop caring. You don't care, and you don't hear what people say to you. It's almost like you're unreachable. Like, you've made this decision, that's it, you're done. And so I just remember all I could focus on was the knife and where it was touching my skin. It's almost like nothing else existed outside of that. And I could hear my husband talking, but I couldn't really hear what he was saying. I could, but I couldn't. It's almost like I could hear it, but it wasn't coming in. And he was holding my son at the time, who was probably about a year and a half to 2 years old, so very young. And he just made this really soft gurgling sound in his throat. And I think because it was just so quiet and it was so pure and so innocent, that my eyes flicked up straight into his eyes. And there was just this, it's like time stood still. And this sea of peace, this endless sea of peace, just opened up in my experience. And there was no pain, no suffering, no idea, no recollection of what I'd been doing a second before. And so, it was really quite remarkable that I had, like, the lowest point in my life, I think, just opened me up into surrender. So this very natural experience, I know it to be now, like, for me it's quite a normal experience now, but at the time it was like transcendent, and it was mind-blowing, and it really captivated my attention. And so this was like the massive wake-up call, but also it's almost like I was equipped with something, like my need, it's like I sent out this need into the universe, like, I'm done, I can't do this. But at the same time, you're afraid of dying. It's like a bit of a weird thing, really. And so, I had this direct experience of, deep peace that was swallowed me whole in a way. It's like there was no aspect of my life left. There was just this endless peace. And so, for me, I kind of that faded, but it kind of ignited a passion in me, ignited a recognition, that somebody could tell you this piece is possible. Like right now, I could be talking, telling you, and your listeners are hearing, like, this amazing piece is possible, and you can live every moment of your life from it. But it kind of, it wouldn't have necessarily meant anything to me. But because I had the direct experience, it was just like, boom, here you go. This is what's on offer in this lifetime. And so for me, I'm like, right, if I can have that right now in this, one of my worst moments in my life, or the most worst moment in my life, I'm pretty sure I could have it again. So I kind of went on a quest then. I went on this search to even a fraction of that piece would have done me, in my everyday life. And so, it kind of led me to finding the Ishayas, the Ishaya monks that I then became one of. And, it's not something I would have thought would have been my pathway, but I think what is meant for us, I think, finds us. And I think we kind of just have to be ready. We just have to be open and so completely done with what isn't working, so we can actually look forward and look to see, well, what is possible. So that's how I came into radically changing my life. But at the same time, everything that I am as an Ishaya monk just matches and aligns with my core values, of honesty and kindness and gentleness and love. And so a bit of a no-brainer, really, to have so initially I learned techniques that started to cultivate this peace within me. And then it's just so natural, isn't it, that you want to serve, you want to help others, you want others to know what is possible. So it led me to wanting to actually become a monk myself, so I could share the gift that was given to me.
It's always interesting to me when I hear an account of when we actually get a sense of that higher self, of that unconditional loving self that we all are. And this is about love, it's about peace, it's about joy, and it's very different from the physical ego self. And all the kind of stories and things and the narratives that the physical ego self actually has. And that's what my book is about. And I'd love to hear about your book in a bit. But my book, Daily Soul Bytes, is really about those two perspectives, the physical ego perspective and the higher self perspective. And really, this is about really guiding us to become much more familiar with our own perspectives, with the narratives that we have within us. And I love the way you said in that instant, you got in touch with that perspective, because peace and joy and love, they are perspectives of the higher self. The ego self is all about competition and survival and fear. Not everybody becomes a seeker after experiencing love, after experiencing that true authentic self. And it could be for a split second. But I love the way you became a seeker. And then you kind of followed the synchronicities and you found the Ishayas, and you're now teaching others. And this is really powerful. And I just wanted to touch on that. Like, there's a moment, every single one of us comes to that moment when we experience a different self, a different part of us within us. And it's about, what do we do? How do we seek to focus on it? And whatever we focus on, we know is what expands. So it's about how we come to expand that part of consciousness, because the physical ego self is also part of consciousness. And I would love to hear your views on consciousness, Meera. What do you define consciousness as?
Well, consciousness for me is all there is. And so we are conscious. We're pure conscious awareness. That's who we really are. And that's what we might call the higher self. But it's very natural. It's very natural. We're always aware of something, aren't we? And really what's happened is the ego is just a collection of thoughts. So it downloaded into our unconscious mind, and it provides this kind of framework of, I am this, I am that. And we kind of identify with these thoughts. And so it becomes like a thought created reality. That's one of the chapters in my book, actually, the Surrender book. And it's like we wear a virtual reality headset. And so everything we see, everything we hear, everything we experience is kind of through these filters of the mind. So we never have a pure experience. So for me, everybody's birthright is to have this pure experience of awareness, of presence. And we know, we talk about being present. And there's a difference even between being present and presence. So to actually be aware of presence, it's like the direction now is inward rather than being present. You might still have an outward focusing experience. And so for presence, it's our birthright. It's so natural for everybody. It's not just for monks or, people meditating in a cave for long hours. It's for everybody. And so that's what I love to let people know and invite them and give them the techniques to start to explore for themselves. The Ascension techniques that I teach and practice myself automatically redirect your attention past the mind. So that's why it's called Ascension, above or beyond, straight into pure awareness again. And so every time you use the technique, they're mechanical. It just enlivens the pure awareness that we are. And so as we continue to rinse and repeat and then just watch the space that follows, you start to become consciously aware of yourself. And then you start to solidify and make that experience more permanent. And so everyone who uses the techniques do that. And then we give them the ongoing guidance, which for me is as important as the techniques. A powerful technique's important, but I think the ongoing guidance kind of helps you to navigate through all the little tricks and traps of the mind, where it's kind of like we're still identified with it and we don't see, the voice in our head. As soon as you see that as just a thought, you're free. You're free to be yourself rather than governed by, the program of thoughts that we've downloaded. So it's a very liberating experience. And it always feels easy and natural and like home, because we're not adding anything to ourselves or taking anything away. All we're doing is just becoming aware of who and what we really are. And so, it's for me, it's a beautiful experience, and I'd love everyone to have it, because it is everyone's birthright. And all you got to do is want it, really. If you want it, then I think you'll find a way to experience it and experience it more and more of the time. Because for me, it's not just for those 20 minutes or half an hour or an hour that we meditate for. It's our everyday life, So we use our techniques eyes open as well as eyes closed, so we're continually coming back, so we stay there.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Meera. I think consciousness is a very interesting topic, and getting a sense of how consciousness is moving in and out of the body, in and out of the consciousness goes into the physical ego state. And if the physical ego state can surrender to consciousness, consciousness will come in. This is the higher consciousness will come in. And then when that task, whatever that physical ego task, that personality construct, this personality construct still has to get on with the day-to-day stuff. I'm not one of those who will say, "Oh, I want to kill the ego." I think the ego, the personality constructs are needed for the things we need to do on the day-to-day. But it's about what is driving those personality constructs. Are they being driven by fear, or are they being driven by love and power? This is the empowered state of being that we can come to. And I love what you said about it being a choice. There are lots of us who come into this earth plane and do not necessarily want to awaken into spirit, and that's okay. But for those that do, there is a need for us to acknowledge the different selves and to acknowledge the path, the journey, the need for ascension. It is essential. We're going higher. We're going higher in our understanding of, deepening our understanding of that higher self. And the higher is in the ascension refers to frequency, doesn't it? It's that frequency that we're vibrating at. And I'd love to know a lot more about your ascension techniques, how you teach that path of going, because it's a lifelong journey, but that path of embodying and integrating the polarities of the physical constructs, that journey of integrating the constructs and becoming much more surrendered to the higher self. How do you support those you work with or guide them in that path, in that process?
Well, it's really just gentle reminders, like the first sphere course that we teach the techniques at, it's held over a weekend, a Friday evening, all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And so there are 4 techniques. And by the end of the weekend, you get a really strong experience. You release a lot of stress. And so it becomes a lot easier for you. It almost provides a platform, if you like, of experience for you to then move forward into your everyday life after the course is completed. And then it's not a residential course necessarily either. So you can kind of go home in between and explore what it's like with your family life. And really for me, that ongoing guidance is just giving little pointers, little reminders. So we simplify the whole process, because we kind of learned to refer to the mind to tell us, if something's good or bad, right or wrong, to assess something and to figure things out. And so we start to get used to actually trusting our intuition. The Ascension techniques really cultivate intuition. So you start to get those pure impulses, the direct knowing, rather than having to think something through. So it's just really gets more and more simple and more easy. And essentially, what we're teaching is saying the same thing over and over again, but we say it in lots of different ways. So it can kind of resonate. We also teach from our experience. So, for example, when I'm trying to express something, I'll share, something in my life that relates to that, so people can understand, as a direct experience, and it's kind of gets enlivened, doesn't it? I love teaching with stories. I think stories really bring to life the concept that you're teaching. So for me, that is probably the clearest way to explain how I do it. It's really just about sharing my experience, so others can see what's possible. And it's almost like you transmit the experience through silence to them. So it's not just about the words. It's like they can kind of live it, breathe it, feel it in the moment that they're listening. So yeah, it's definitely a bringing everything to life. So we only teach in person for that reason, because otherwise you kind of lose that transmission a little bit. If it was in a book or on a video, you don't then get that direct connection, that direct synergistic impact of somebody sharing their experience, because we feel, don't we feel somebody's presence when we're in their presence.
And this is a 1-day training, or over 2 days? How long do they tend to last for?
The course it's a 2.5 day weekend course, starting on a Friday evening, and then all day Saturday and all day Sunday. So you kind of we start off with like little bite-sized amounts, because some people have never sat still for very long, and some people feel like as well, I'm not going to be able to stop my mind, I'm not going to be able to sit still and meditate. And so we just guide them in very gently, and we're always working with the natural tendencies of the mind and the body. So we're not forcing anything, we're really just coming back to self. The Ascension techniques are like a thought that replace the other thoughts and redirect the attention back onto silence. So it's really like gym for the mind in a way. So people come just because they want better sleep, or they want to feel less anxious, less stressed, or more peace. And others are spiritual seekers. You know, they want to have the full experience, the spiritual exploration, and really discover who and what they are. So the course is so beautifully set up that it kind of supports you and whatever your desires are. So we're empowering people through their own journey, rather than teaching them to do it in a set way. So like, they don't have to do it the way I've done it. It's really just nurturing them and letting them start to explore for themselves. And then we can help guide them through that, navigate through that, so that they can start to have that clearer experience for themselves, which happens quite quickly, actually, because the techniques are, boom, you're there. They're automatic. They're mechanical. So that's what keeps it simple, I think, you know. And I think when something's simple and easy, I think we're more likely to do it, to practice it, aren't we, than when something's, you know, complicated or challenging or confusing. It's not so easy to continue to apply in your everyday life.
I love the way you are guiding into silence, into stillness, because that dance with the negativity is so powerful. It's so addictive. And it does take us a while to even begin to incline towards the positivity. And I think I see it as a pendulum. So you start out being negative, and then you're inclining towards the positive, and you keep swinging until you get to that neutral space, which is the present, that 0 point present. And I love what you said about present and presence. Would you differentiate between the two for us, Meera? What's the difference between being present in that 0 point? You're not thinking of the past, the future, you're right here now. What's the difference between that from your perspective and presence?
Yeah, so for me, if you're being present, then you're still outward facing. So your senses are still outward facing, and presence is an inner state of being. So when there's presence, then more of your attention is drawn within. So for me, it's kind of like I relate it to a little bit like the way our eyes work. So, you know, to have a clear experience visually, you need a strong peripheral vision, don't you? That's how the way the eyes work. If you have a strong peripheral vision, then you have a very clear point. It goes onto the back of your eye, and you get a very clear image. And it's the same with conscious awareness. When we're exploring, we have that point of focus. So right now it's you in front of me on my laptop. But it's also having what we start to cultivate with the techniques is a strong peripheral awareness. And it's an inner state of being, but it's infinite. So it's not housed in the body, if you like. In a way, the egoic mind exists within the state of pure conscious awareness. So it's the context, and the mind and the emotions and the body are the content that exist within the context of stillness and silence. So presence is very much knowing who you are fully as pure conscious awareness. And so it's almost like it's a unification, really, where it's like you're folded back in on yourself. So you're aware that you're aware, rather than your awareness being directed out. So you might be present, but your awareness is still directed out, and that's being present. And that's a beautiful experience. And you know, people love that. But I think for those of us that are monks, and those of us that are spiritual seekers, is we want to go that one step further and to become aware of presence. That's the sweet experience in my experience anyway. It's like I'm one of those people who wants everything, you know, like whatever experience is available, I want it. And so what I'm finding with the Ascension techniques is it's continual giving me more, you know, like it's an infinite experience, awareness and silence. There's no edges to it. So you can explore it forever, and it just gets richer and deeper and fuller. And yeah, it's like it permeates every aspect of your life. And then everything's unified. So like you say, you don't want to kill the ego. You don't want to get rid of anything. Actually, you just want to welcome everything in, and then everything finds its perfect place. And when everything's in balance and harmony, then presence is alive, and it's that light of consciousness is, you know, on full, if you like, full beam.
It is. It's beautiful, and it integrates into presence integrates. It begins to drive. It begins to drive that that external perception, because we have to engage with the world. We have to find a way where we are surrendering. I'd love to hear about your book, Surrender, in a bit. The spiritual awakening journey, for me, started when I was 18, when I read the book by Ramana Maharishi saying, "Who am I?" And this book really taught me about the two selves, about, the physical ego self and the higher self. And Ramana Maharishi is somebody who I really value, because he really got my attention on stillness. Because from, you may know his teachings, he really values stillness, even if he felt that stillness, silence, was more powerful than words. And so there is a need for us to understand that space of silence, but to also, I think it doesn't have to be this or this, it could be this and this. There's a need for us to understand the internal way of being, our state of being, the pure awareness within us, but to also be comfortable with emotional mastery, with being able to be in a place where we're having no judgments, where we're not thinking of the past or the future, we're not having any anxiety, we're not having any kind of depression, thinking of all the things of the past, because these things serve us, and we need to kind of ascend beyond those points. But there are always layers, and there are always layers to peel in our healing journey. So I love what you said about clarifying the difference between the presence, which is that internal state of being, and that present space, which we need to, when we need to come out with our personality constructs, which really need to be surrendering to that presence within. We need to understand both. Understand, it's almost like a dance. You're going in, you're going out. And that's how I've come to understand that way of being, how we can develop a deeper understanding of the pure awareness, and also a deeper understanding of how we are surrendering and perceiving and interacting from that place of neutrality, that place of non-judgment. And which brings me to Surrender. If you could tell us about your book, how where people can find it, what it contains, what made you write it, what the readers can expect when they get a copy.
Yeah, sure. So it's the second book I wrote, following the first book, which was Peace or Pain. And so initially my emphasis was on helping people in physical pain. But it's bizarre how the book started off like that, and then it grew into something more. I was finding people were buying it, and it was helping them with, anxiety, anything emotional, and mental pain as well. And the foundation really of changing your relationship with pain and actually coming back and coming away from suffering. So you can always have pain, but for example, suffering is a secondary reaction. Like a lot of what we call pain is suffering. And so all suffering can be eliminated. It can certainly be reduced. And the foundation for changing that is surrender, because it's not so much what's happening to us, it's our resistance to what's happening to us that causes the suffering. So when you start to really see that first we have to kind of understand it theoretically. And so that's what I kind of talk people through with the Surrender book, is what my understanding of surrender used to be and how it's changed in me. And so, it almost walks you through step by step the journey that I had, in a way, from the thought created reality that some people live in permanently, like they just don't know anything beyond what their mind tells them is true and real. And the mind, what we hold in the mind can be contradictory. So that's when we kind of get the proverbial angel and devil on the shoulders. It's almost like we have that conversation in our head, don't we? And it's just like, I want to do something. Oh, but are you sure? I don't know if you'll be very good at that, or what, and it's like this conversation that goes on in our head. And it's like going beyond that, surrendering to ourself, to that still silent self. You talked about the fascination with stillness. And that for me is like prioritizing stillness, and everything else follows. Everything finds its place. Everything works out perfectly if you prioritize stillness. And as you do that, so really for me is what you're surrendering to is stillness. but stillness within. It's not this separate space that you surrender to or put your attention on. It's actually just rediscovering who and what you are in your fullness. And so, yeah, stillness is, for me, my priority. And I think when I focus and I'm one-pointed on stillness, everything else just falls into place. And so, yeah, the book is really about how you utilize the art of surrender so that you do gain that fulfillment in life. You gain yourself, really. The only thing you ever lose is stress. You lose what you are not. But in truth, nothing ever goes. It's just, it transmutes. Anxiety can transmute into joy when you stop resisting how you're feeling. So you welcome everything in. You haven't got to get rid of emotions or calm them even. You don't have to get rid of thoughts. You just come back into recognizing you're the awareness of them. And then that's the surrender that brings a really rich and full life. So the book really kind of explains what it all is and how it plays out in every facet of your life, how many ways that we resist, because we miss that. We're so used to almost living in a state of resistance. And sometimes what we're resisting is because of resistance. So it's like layers of an onion where we start to unravel it chapter by chapter to see what's actually happening, so we can make a different choice and recognize how we can choose for stillness and start to have the direct living experience of it, more and more often. And so we fill our day up with stillness, and then life is, really contented and quiet and still, but also alive and vibrant, and exciting.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. And I think, this sometimes we resist developing that relationship, cultivating that relationship with stillness, because we think we will lose our vitality. We think it will become boring. And I love having someone like you that is so, vivacious and so, so full of life, talk about this. Because there is that conditioning that, it's boring, that it's not something that we want to engage in. This is stillness. This is the new way of being, and go. And it's one thing to actually live your day to day as a mother, as a CEO, as an artist. In that spiritual awakening journey where you are being driven, you're surrendering more and more to that higher self. And I think it's yet another thing to go all the way to become a monk, because that's another journey. And I'm curious to know about what your average day is like as an Ishaya monk. What because this is many people will be curious about this, because it's going over, and this is really where the truth lies. This is where our true authenticity is, when we embrace that self, when we embrace that higher self, that spirit being, because we are spirit beings. When we really come to live as spirit beings, life is certainly not boring. But I would love to know a bit about what your average day is like, Meera.
Yeah, for sure. So in times past, as Ishaya monks, they would have lived in a monastery. But as consciousness has risen, the monks have then started to come out into the world. And so that's how I found out about it, And for me, what I've always loved about the Ishayas is it's so down to earth. It's so natural, It's not like I'm having to do anything, or like I think a lot of monks kind of give up things, don't they, and live in poverty, and actually we don't need to do that. And I think some of the best lessons are living out in the world, bumping up against sometimes the people who trigger us the most, family members, work colleagues, to actually live in the world, for me, is what continues to provide lessons for me to recognize where I'm holding on, to an ego self that isn't actually, it's not bad or wrong, but it's just not the fullest version. It's just a fraction of who and what I am. And so my everyday life probably looks very ordinary to an awful lot of people, actually. But my experience of it is it feels like I'm living like I'm on holiday. So my perception of life is very different, even though my life doesn't look a lot more different than it was before I became a monk. So I'm still a mum, I've got my children are now, my son's just turned 21 actually, and my daughter's 23. And so I'm still a mum. I still do all the things, like my daughter's moving back home soon, so we've got to go and move her, go down to Brighton, come and bring her back home. I work, but my work now is more focused on helping people transcend suffering. So I teach meditation, I do online courses, in-person courses, as well as teaching the Ascension techniques. I'm a meditation tutor at City Lit, which is an adult learning college in London. And I teach for a mental health organisation as well. So my life is very normal in a way, you might say, but my experience of it is worlds apart from how it used to be. Originally, I was a graphic designer, and I still do that. I love design. I love to be creative. And actually, Ascension for me has given me the capacity to access that creativity like 24/7. Like, you don't get the blocks to creativity that I used to get. So when I'm writing my books, it just comes through, it just flows through. So it does make for a very gentle life. And when people see evil in the world, or badness or wrongness or chaos, like the world, there's a lot of chaotic stuff going on in the world right now, and a lot of dysfunction, but I just see joy. I just see light and happiness and love. Because for me, when the bad stuff happens, people join together and they connect. And I think that's our power, is when we connect and we share and we be so authentic with each other. So for me, I just love meeting somebody in the supermarket, on the street, and just to be able to be that person that doesn't judge them, that doesn't see them as broken, and that can just connect with people in a much more heartfelt, natural way, without having any of the insecurities that I used to have, any of the anger that I used to have. It just kind of clears the decks and gives me a much more pure experience. So I can do all the ordinary everyday stuff, and it has a greater impact, I think, the more we focus on stillness. For example, powerful business people learn meditation, and it makes them better at their jobs. I don't think meditation is something that just some people do. I think everybody can harness it to get the best out of their job, the best out of their relationships, which are always smoother and easier, because as you let go of anger, as you let go of judgments, so you have a different experience of everything. You have a clearer, purer experience of everything. I see people as suffering. So rather than being triggered, it's like that reactivity has more or less vanished, because I see that someone's suffering and I just love them and want to help them, rather than feeling the force of their aggression, for example. I see their pain, and it's like, as we release it in ourselves, we don't then experience the intensity that we can. If we're still holding on to something in ourselves and someone comes at us, then it's like, there's a force, that bounces up against each other. Whereas when we kind of, in a way, we reduce ourselves to zero, and so nothing impacts us. We just can stay in a really pure, calm, grounded state of being, no matter what, is presented to us. So my everyday life is very normal.
Oh, I love that. And it's the timelines. I thank you for sharing that, Meera, because I think it's what tends to happen when we raise our frequency, that we really begin to experience higher timelines of more joy, more peace. And yes, there may be things going on around us, but they don't necessarily impact us, especially if we do not engage, if we have a state of detachment. And detachment is not a negative thing. I know it's something that Krishnamurti talks about. That detachment is really what gives us that inner state of being that allows us to rise above those things that we feel we need to attach to. So first we have to detach. And by detachment, it's really a case of aligning to that presence within us, aligning to that higher self within us. And that allows us to see the infinite possibilities around us, that we can then creatively solve problems in an easier way. So it's because sometimes people will say, oh, I must engage with things, otherwise I'm being rude, or I'm being selfish, or, there's such a conditioning that, they're all lower perspectives. And I think we all have to come to understand when we're engaging. If we're engaging from a place of fear, whether we're engaging with our colleagues or with teachers or coaches, Thank you so much, Meera. And where can people find you when they want to connect with you, Meera?
Yeah, so Meera has a few meanings of the name. And so one of the meanings of my name, Meera, is the boundless goddess. So I called my business Boundless Meditation to reflect the essence of who and what I am. And so, yeah, I have a website, which is boundless-meditation.co.uk. So people can find me on there, and all my books are on there. They're actually from Amazon, but the links are all on there for the books, the courses. I do video shorts and guided meditations that people can access on YouTube. So, yeah, everyone, you can find everything that I do on my website.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Meera, for joining me today. I am so thrilled that you came. Very, very beautiful conversation. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
And I'd like to thank those who have joined us today and invite you to subscribe to the Daily Soul Bytes show. We always have new episodes every Wednesday, and grab Meera Ishaya's book. This is going to really help to continue that journey of surrender, which the physical legal constructs have to engage in. And we all having to surrender at another level. It's you never surrender in one go. So for those who are thinking, well, I'm done with surrender, no, it's an ongoing journey. And I do want to encourage you to also get a copy of Daily Soul Bytes, my book. It's now available in all formats, Kindle, paperback, and audiobook. And I look forward to seeing you on the very next episode of the Daily Soul Bytes show. Bye-bye.